All right, welcome back to Drive on KFH Radio, joined now by Jack Oliver from Classic Hits, KEYN, as well as Lita Ford, who will be at Hartman Arena coming up November 11th with Bret Michaels' Night Ranger. How are you today, Lita?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Interesting to me that you were born and spent some years of your life in England and moved to the United States when you were in second grade. What precipitated that move, and how often do you think about, man, what if we hadn't come over here? What would I be doing today?
Oh, there's a lot of what ifs in anybody's life, I think, but my mother was, she loved the beach. And when she married my dad, my mother was born and raised in Rome, and she grew up on the beaches of Italy. And when she married my dad and moved to the UK, the beaches were kind of cold and dreary, and my mom was just sort of like, can we get out of here? Can we go someplace warm? So we ended up in California on the beach, and she just loved it. She's sort of a sun worshiper, and that's where I started second grade.
Well, Lita, I was always wondering about, I know that you liked early bands, like you were into Deep Purple and bands like that. Most women in those times, young girls, they were playing guitar, but they were playing like folk music. You never heard hardly a woman get on a guitar and shred it like you do and play like you do. What got you into playing guitars more on the electrical and more in the metal bass guitar as opposed to the folk guitar or just the pop music?
I have no explanation for why I ended up doing what I do, but I just look at it as like it's a gift from God. And, God gives certain people special talents to do things. And I really do just feel like that he just said, you shall be the rock metal queen of guitar. Boom. And then I started listening to all my favorite riffs, Deep Purple and Black Sabbath. And Black Sabbath were actually the first rock concert I had ever gone to when I was 13, and it just changed my life. I wanted to do what they were doing, and I just kind of saw my future. And I followed all their solos and riffs and Deep Purple solos and riffs, and I just figured them out on a record that I had a great big record player in my mother and father's living room when I was a kid, and I would sit in front of the record player and push the needle back in the grooves, and I'd keep playing the riff over and over until I figured it out on guitar. But like 2 years after playing guitar, I could play all this stuff. And the kids used to come over from the neighborhood, and we'd all sit in my mother and father's living room, and I would jam. And they would watch me, and they would say, Lita, how come you can do this and we can't? And I would say to them, well, how come you can't and I can? I would turn the table on them, and they would get all frustrated. But they just used to like to watch. And at an early age, I started enjoying entertaining people with music. Kind of cool.
Absolutely. Lita Ford is our guest. She'll be at the Hartman Arena on November 11th with Bret Michaels and Night Ranger. It's a little hard to imagine you now sitting around a campfire strumming an acoustic guitar, right, Lita? It's
I don't know. I do it all the time here.
Do you really?
In my house, we've got a bonfire pit that we light fires, and we drink whiskey, and we play guitar.
Well, I'd love to be a part of that someday. Maybe in another life. Who knows? You mentioned Black Sabbath and the fact that you kind of followed their work, and then it must be surreal to you to have gotten to know them and that band, and certainly Sharon Osbourne and Ozzy. It's got to be a surreal feeling for you to have those relationships after kind of idolizing them as a kid.
I was thinking about that the other day when I was driving down the road here with my truck and my dog, and I was just thinking, God puts you on a certain path in life, and sometimes you're able to sort of see that path ahead of time. Like, I guess you call it following your dreams. And I knew somehow that band was going to be, I was going to be involved with those people somehow in some way, shape, or form. So when it actually did happen and it actually did come down, I just sort of went, okay, well, they're just real people. And that whole vision that I have of these superheroes that were originally my heroes in hard rock and heavy metal became real human beings, and everything was different. Sometimes I was thinking too, sometimes people will, like Satan will come along and knock you off that path that you're on, and things get all messed up and twisted, and you're like, whoa, I got to get back to my dreams. I got to get back to the right path that I'm supposed to be on. And it happens, whatever that situation might be for whatever person. Maybe they lose somebody in their life that they love, or they get involved in drugs or something like that, and they just get knocked off that path. But I feel like God, again, is watching out for me. And I'm not religious. My religion is rock and roll. And I just still feel like God is watching out for me, and he's put me back on that path again. And I'm off here in 2019, 2020, and I'm still on that path, and I'm just so grateful. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys. I hope so.
Oh, it does.
It made perfect sense, Lita.
Anytime you're on the right path, you're going the right way. Let's go back to the Runaways real quick. I mean, back in '75, you were recruited to be in this band, the Runaways, and I'm one of those people who I believe the Runaways belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because you guys were at the forefront of putting together an all-women rock and roll band, which at those times, even the album stations would not play female artists, and it was hard to get female artists on the air. And so you guys broke that range in there with some of the songs that you had out. Short-lived band, only lasted a few years, but like I say, big impression with the music industry and where the music industry was headed.
Yeah, it was, we were before our time, for sure. 1976, the Runaways would just play for a sea of guys, denim and leather, and, not that there's anything wrong with that. I kind of enjoyed it. And now there's a lot of females in the audience. Like, our whole front row is usually females rooting us on, and, it's awesome. It's just so great to be able to have lived through that and turned everything full circle for the music world. And now, women, why can't women play guitar? I mean, it's not like a muscle job or anything like that.
Lita Ford.
Music.
That's right. Lita Ford is our guest. You talked about this band, the Runaways, forming back in 1975 and putting out an album in 1976. And Jack asked you what your impressions were of that. I'm curious, because you were 16, 17 years old at the time. Did you really even understand all that was going on?
It was like going through college to learn how to be the real deal. You go through college and you just want to learn something. It's like you go and you think to yourself, well, I want to be a veterinarian, so I'm going to learn everything I can to become this veterinarian. And with me, it was being a rock star, being a rock and roll, songwriter, musician, guitar player, and I had to learn everything I wanted to learn about being on the road and how to deal with different people in the music industry. And to me, the Runaways taught me a lot of things like that I needed to know. It set me up for life.
I heard one time that after like your opening show, when you guys went out and you were on tour by yourself, that Robert Plant came up to you and said, "Do you want to join Led Zeppelin?" Is that a true story?
Yeah, it is, and people can shake their head and laugh and say whatever they want to say. But I was a little badass in the Runaways. And when Robert Plant and Jimmy Page came backstage after seeing us at Gazzari's in Los Angeles, the place was packed. And I guess they were having some issues with John Paul Jones at the time. And Robert Plant said to me, "Do you want to play bass in Led Zeppelin?" And I just kind of went, "Ha! Yeah, right." But he was serious. And I just, I had to shake it off. I didn't give it a second thought, because it wouldn't have worked back then, And I took it as a compliment, and that's it.
Well, now, wait a minute. You say it wouldn't work. Tell us why it wouldn't work in your estimation.
Well, in the 70s, females weren't accepted in the music world. And plus, they were one of my favorite bands. And John Paul Jones is like the god on guitar, on bass. And it was just like somebody saying, hey, you want to replace Richie Blackmore in Deep Purple? And, to me, it's like, yeah, sure, that ain't ever going to happen. I don't care who says it can happen or who's going to make it try to happen. The key word is try. It isn't going to happen. It's just,
Yeah. Lita Ford is our guest. Again, she'll be at the Hartman Arena along with Bret Michaels, Night Ranger, and Joe Nichols coming up on November 11th. You mentioned earlier driving around in your truck with your dog. So what kind of music are you listening to when you're doing that, Lita?
I listen to all kinds of stuff. We're going to be playing in the Dominican the first week of November. I believe it's like November 5th, and we're playing with Sammy Hagar. And I just been doing a lot of Van Halen, listening to Van Halen when he was with Van Halen, and of course Night Ranger and Bret Michaels. I like to brush up on the songs that we're gonna be doing a show with that certain artist, because you never know chances of them inviting you to do something, or even a sound check, just a jam at sound check is so fun.
Well, one of the things we need to talk about real quick is we've talked about this great history, but just lately you have been put into the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Heavy Metal History, and they get you in there, and it just shows how much respect people have for your guitar playing.
That was just, again, a gift, from all the hard work and just turning things around in the music industry to be able to be inducted as a rock guitarist and a rock performer as a female. It just speaks volumes.
You've had a remarkable career. You're not even close to being done, and we look forward to seeing you along with Bret Michaels and Night Ranger here in Wichita at Hartman Arena on November 11th. Thanks, Lita, so much for being with us today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me.